June 13th, 2019. I'm GTG, and this is my report on my first internship interview. Woohoo! Went to Mission District School, which I subbed at a couple of years ago. I had a 7th and 8th grade class for about 3 days. Maybe it was 4 days, something like that. And went there this morning for my first interview for an internship. And it was their last day of school. They were all in the, it's a small school, there's only about 300 or 350 students there. And the students were in their assembly room. I walked in to the assembly, and a bunch of them started waving at me. And I waved back. I didn't go over to talk to them, but that was kind of interesting. Because it's been almost 2 years since I was there, and these kids still remembered me, so I must have made an impression after, But I haven't been back since, mostly because that school, well, 2 reasons. One, that school is not on the substitute assignment. So I don't remember if they've called me to go back, but I think I think they did call me a couple of times, but I was never available because I was already booked elsewhere. Plus, they were the lowest paying in the district. So I took the job thinking they're going to pay like everyone else, because Greenfield is like the highest paying. So I figured, okay, out in the back country of Monterey County, I figured they'd be paying like Greenfield, but no, they were actually less, like half of what Greenfield paid. But I said, well, since I'll finish the job since I signed up for it. But it turned out that it was one of the best schools I have ever subbed at, and assuming if I get offered a position, I'll probably take it. They only have one position. It's for a 5th/6th grade class. And so the interview consisted of, a couple of teachers, the principal, and one of the superintendent, because it's a one school district. The principal remembered me. That's noon. Turn this beepy 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 off. There we go. And one of the teachers was the teacher I substituted for. He said, I was a sub here. And he says, yes, it was my class. That was interesting. The ones who were waving at me. So the kids who were waving at me, they were his students. So I wondered what they said about him. I think I got an email from him. I have to go look back at the time. I never replied. I probably should have. I just got busy with life and things. They asked me a bunch of questions, the usual kind of teacher questions. Why did you want to become a teacher? What is some of your strongest suits? Talk about some of the highlights of my teaching career. I told them about my story about how I had cancer, my education, what makes me think I'm a good teacher, and I emphasized several times that I have the ability to take complex subjects and boil it down into simple concepts, not just for students but for adults. Talked about how I can, all my degrees, that I can do video editing, I can do graphic design. They asked me what some of my strongest traits were, and I said persistence, because I said all that I've been through in my life, through cancer, and I told him the story about how, my initial diagnosis was 90% that I'd be dead within 5 years, but I'm still here, not because of a miracle, but because new technology. So I like to say I didn't beat the odds changed. They asked me a whole bunch of other questions, too, that I answered, I think, somewhat coherently, if rambling. They asked me what I thought about discipline and the role of discipline. I said that discipline basically is 2 functions. One, to so that the child can learn, the student can learn, and second, so the class can learn. I mean, I didn't say this. I thought of a lot of things I should have said afterwards. Like I said, I thought later that I should have said something along the lines of, ideally you want the kid to calm down, the student to calm down, so he can learn or she can learn, but likewise, you don't want him to be so disruptive that the rest of the class can't learn. And I was also pointing out that as a substitute, the things I can do as a substitute aren't necessarily the things I would do as a teacher. I mean, like for instance, as a substitute, I've never called a parent. I have sent kids to the office, but as a regular teacher, I can't send a kid to the office every day. I didn't think about it, but there's also safety issues like bullies. I mean, there's the bullying issue, and then there's also the issue of some clown kid who is always goofing off, but does so in a way that endangers himself or others. He asked how I would set up teaching groups. And I was pointing out that you want to make sure that the goals are clear for what they're doing. I said that also, with a lot of handouts and a lot of instructions I get as a substitute, they're really not clear. And, a lot of times if I'm handing out something for the students to do and the directions are so vague or unclear that I, as an adult teacher, can't understand them, how is a second grader going to understand them? So I made the point of that. And there's a whole lot of other things. They said that I'll probably know in the next few days, sometime next week. Oh, they only have one position. On the plus side, I think they were impressed with me. On the negative side, it is a pretty good school. And I would think anybody that's going to go out there is going to be willing to go out that far. So I think they said they had several, so I think that means at least 2 more people, maybe 3. There are factors that may fall into this that, may not even be legal for them to consider, but may happen anyway. For instance, my age. I mean, they know I'm not a spring chicken, so they may want somebody who they can hire who's going to be there for 10 years, 20 years, which is not to say that I might not be there if things worked out, but they might want to go for somebody younger. My size, I mean, there's always you're a fat guy. I'm not completely bilingual. I did point out that, like, just a few days ago, I was teaching bilingual math to a first grade class in my broken Spanish, and the kids were actually seeming to understand me, and I managed to teach them how to add 2-digit numbers together in using my broken Spanish. They asked me a question about what would I do with a student who couldn't read, and I'd say I'd first want to establish what level they're at, and also, is it a function of they just haven't learned yet, or do they have some kind of a learning deficit? I mean, because that makes a difference. If they're dyslexic, they're going to need special help, as opposed to somebody who's just never learned. Maybe they come from a school district or a home. Maybe they're fresh from Mexico, and they've never spoken, never read before. So those are things to figure out. And once I establish what level they're at, start at that level. I mean, I used a math metaphor. You don't teach calculus to somebody who can't add numbers together yet. In other words, you want to start with small levels. So, at the very least, this was a good first experience. I mean, it is like a little over a 30-mile drive out there and 30 miles back, so, between 60, 70 miles a day, depending, to get out there. That's tires and wear and tires, gas, and engine wear. Not to mention that if I had a major breakdown, that could be a problem, because there's no buses that go out that way. Whereas if in Salinas, like for instance, if I was over at Virginia, Barton, or Alisal, or Fremont, I could walk. If I was at any other school in Salinas, I could probably walk in a pinch, or take a bus if necessary, get a bicycle. But this school, I would have to have a functioning vehicle, because there's no other way out there. Now my vehicle's working fine right now, so, and I have the station wagon as a backup. So we'll see how that works out. My time, I'm going to go out to CSUMB in a few minutes. I've got to finish my registration and see about making my first installment payment on tuition for summer. I have to see if I could qualify for any financial aid for the fall and beyond. So we'll see what happens. That's all for now.